I figured out why some people are not as high on the Green Bay Packers this season. They are underrating two key things for the Green Bay Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I figured it out. There are people out there who don't think the Packers are contenders, that they have a good shot at contention. The draft dudes, our pals over at Locked On NFL Scouting, they came on the list. Now, their list had a very specific methodology of how they ranked all of the disparate pieces. And I understand why they reached the conclusion that the Packers were in a tier based on their system below the true contenders. And the reason is the receivers are not an impressive group, individual player for player for player. But as a group, they're really good. The offensive line, player for player for player, just kind of fine. But last year, they produced, as pass blockers in particular, like a top 5 offensive line. So if you don't think those groups based on talent, if you think they outperform their talent, okay, I understand that. But there are two things true contenders need: elite coaching and elite quarterback play. That is the easiest and most direct way to title contention. And the Green Bay Packers have a top 5 coach and a top 10 quarterback. So the Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, their list was very instructive to me. I figured this out based on that because I didn't like their head coaching list. I thought Matt LaFleur was too low. I didn't like their quarterback list. I thought Jordan Love was too low. And so when they came out with the tiers, I initially thought, how can the Browns possibly be ahead of them? The Browns are 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Packers are 19-1. And it's because the Browns do have a better roster. And so if you're going to rank, okay, corners, offensive line, defensive line, safety, like I understand how you could come to the conclusion that the Browns have a better roster than the Green Bay Packers, won more games than the Green Bay Packers last season with a third-string quarterback. I understand that. But if you want to project sustainable and direct paths to contention, it's the head coach and it's the quarterback. And if you are not sold on Jordan Love, you are not going to be sold on this Green Bay Packers team. And if you are not sold on Matt LaFleur, or even if you're just marginally less sold, you are not going to be as into this version of the Green Bay Packers. It is really just that simple. And in some ways, it seems reductive to the point of being obvious to say, well, if you don't think the disparate pieces are as good as I do, that you're going to not think the team is as good as I do. What's interesting is if you actually listen to that show, and I recommend you go listen to that show, they talk about how the Packers are the most likely from that tier of teams that includes the Texans, the Cowboys, some other teams that are expected to be very good, like playoff teams, like better chance than not to be playoff teams. The Packers have the best chance to push into that contender group. But what I take issue with is even understanding if you think Jordan Love is not quite as good as the last 10 games suggest. If you think Matt LaFleur is not as good as his last 5 years suggest, which is a wild thing. But let's just say, I can understand to a point coming to the conclusion, well, they're not that good. Here's the problem. We saw them in the playoffs look incredible. They were a dropped interception or a made field goal, like any 6 plays, pick one. If it goes differently, the Packers are in the NFC Championship game to play a team they've already beaten. They proved last year, the second time they played the Detroit Lions, the second time, they were better or were capable of being better. They proved last year they were capable of playing better than the Kansas City Chiefs in a game where the Chiefs, it wasn't like they just like bumbled all over the place. The Packers outplayed them. The Packers beat them. The Pittsburgh Steelers were a playoff team. The Packers, now the run defense, that was problematic. Joe Barry's gone. Jordan Love was excellent. Like the 2 interceptions, if you just looked at the box score, you'd say it wasn't that impressive. No, it was. Big time throws in that game. The touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs, incredible throw. The touchdown pass to Jaden Reed, incredible throw on the first drive of the game, the first third down conversion. An absolute missile shot to Christian Watson. That was the game. Matt LaFleur said that was the game that made us realize we could do more than we were doing, that this could be something special because of Jordan Love. In the do or die moments against a Chicago Bears team that was playing really well defensively, Jordan Love was outstanding. And then going into Dallas in a massive game for the Dallas Cowboys. I understand Dallas perennial underachievers in the postseason, but Dak Prescott had been playing like an MVP. He was, in fact, the MVP favorite in mid-December, a month later, against a Super Bowl winning coach, against one of the most talented teams in the entire NFL, the Packers. Yes, the Packers, with just okay receivers and a just okay offensive line and a quarterback who's not in the top 10 and a coach who's not in the top 5, beat the brakes off the Dallas Cowboys. Beat their, you know what? You know what? So it is a little bit like me at the end going, any more questions? Like, what is the reason to doubt at this point? And our pal Eric Eager said this, and I thought this was really smart. Before the season, he and I agreed the Packers, with their win totals and all those things, were undervalued. I said as much, I bet as much. I put my money where my mouth was. And what he said was the infrastructure in Green Bay was being underrated. And what he meant was Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, that infrastructure, the coaching infrastructure, the play calling, the institutional ability to churn the roster and add pieces through the draft, through free agency. And that was absolutely right. And yet, here we are, again, on the edge, on the precipice of training camp. And people are doing it again. It boggles my mind. But at least I've now come to the understanding of why this is happening. They are doing exactly what they did last year. They learned nothing from last year. And look, if the Packers do it again, maybe they will learn, but they didn't when it was year after year of high-level quarterback play from Aaron Rodgers after we hadn't seen that. Matt LaFleur didn't get any credit for that. And even now, after seeing Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur has not gotten the proper credit, even retroactively, for what was happening because of Aaron Rodgers, despite the fact that we remember, we were there, what it looked like before. And you know, who knows what it's going to look like this year. So let's do this. Let's go through and see how the Packers match up with these other top teams in the NFC and try and figure out what the rightful place for the Packers is this season. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the job. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So in the spirit of being fair to those who don't think the Packers are quite in that echelon of teams. And I think, by the way, the AFC is being wildly overrated. Wildly overrated. Now, we're going to talk about NFC teams, but I don't see why the Bills are going to be better. I don't see why the Bengals are going to be significantly better when I still have a ton of questions about that defense. I don't know what version of T. Higgins I'm getting because he's frustrated with his contract. He's not going to want to get hurt. Is he going to want to play through injury? Who knows what's going on in New York? Miami, you got to prove it, guys. Like, you can be a nice story during the regular season, but the second half, teams kind of figured it out. And the defense, you lose your defensive coordinator. What is that going to look like? That's a lot of questions. And I will believe it when I see it with the Browns. Being real, being a team that can actually hang with these teams that have good quarterbacks, because Deshaun Watson at this point in his career is just not one of those good quarterbacks. But let's move to the NFC. The 49ers, clearly the cream of the proverbial crop in the NFC and the league. They have, top to bottom, probably the best roster in football. One of the big questions, though, right now is they've lost some talent. Dre Greenlaw, if he plays, he's going to play late in the season and probably be a diminished version of himself. The signing of Devondre Campbell tells you a lot, I think, about his status this season. Eric Armstead is no longer in the building, and Brandon Ayuk may no longer be in the building. He is asked out. Now, Deebo Samuel asked out. There were questions about if Nick Bosa was going to ask out. This has kind of been the modus operandi of the 49ers over the last few seasons. But this is got to catch up with them at some point. The constant getting close and losing and then churning the roster and trying to make it work with these other younger players who maybe aren't as good. Like, you move on from DeForest Buckner, you bring in Javon Kinlaw. Well, Javon Kinlaw could not hold DeForest Buckner's jockstrap. I don't know if anyone still uses those, but if they do, I guess that would make it easier to hold because you wouldn't be as grossed out about it if no one's using it, if it's clean, if it's unused. The Packers showed how they matched up with the 49ers in the divisional round. They can play with this team. And one of the reasons is they can attack the 49ers defense on the edges where their run defense is most suspect. New defensive coordinator in San Francisco. A little bit of a desperation move in San Francisco. We don't know what to do. Steve Wilkes is out. First-time defensive coordinator coming in there. With some of the changes. Tashawn Gibson suspended. He's not going to be back. There are low-key more questions than I think people have given credit for there. And the Packers showed. They showed they can play with that team. They're a dropped interception from Darnell Savage away. Well, Xavier McKinney's in the building now. You're going to get Eric Stokes back healthy. You're going to get Carrington Valentine, Jair Alexander this season. You've improved or at least added to your linebacker room. And now you're playing a version of defense that makes sense for what you are. So they match up well with the 49ers. You still have to put the 49ers above them. Okay. I will live with someone who wants to put Detroit ahead of Green Bay. I will live for now. Now, I still think the defensive issues that team had are not fixed. Like sniping Terry and Arnold from the Packers does not fix the issues in Detroit. They lose CJ Gardner-Johnson. They still don't have a secondary pass rusher. They still don't have a secondary pass catcher who is a receiver. And they rely a lot on their offensive line and their scheme. If they have one injury, like if Penei Sewell misses 6-8 weeks, can that offense still work? The Packers proved if Rasheed Walker or Yosh Nijman or one of these guys, John Runyon Jr. is not playing his best, they can manage it. They're not as reliant on any individual piece as a team like Detroit. They have more high-end talent on offense, but the Packers are less reliant on the high-end talent and have more depth at several key positions. And Jordan Love is better. Jordan Love is better. He's better than Jared Goff. He's better than no one in the league would trade Jared Goff. Let me try and phrase this the right way. No one in the league would trade for Jared Goff if they had Jordan Love. And they're going to end up costing a pretty similar number. You'd rather have Jordan Love. I'd rather have Matt LaFleur, although I think Dan Campbell adds a lot of value as someone who's going to go for it and be aggressive on fourth down. The culture, that stuff matters. I think those teams are pretty even. And the path to me to improvement year over year is not only easier to see in Green Bay, but the upside is greater because they have these young pieces that showed a ton that can get even better. It's not a hope and a prayer on Jameson Williams, who has shown nothing in the NFL. He needs to be your wide receiver too. No, it's Dontavian Wicks, who looked awesome last year in spurts and who Jordan Love just said the sky's the limit for. He can be incredible. But Jaden Reed led the team in receiving, or Luke Musgrave's going to be healthy, and Tucker Kraft in year 2. There are, and they all showed real potential. Even if I grant you Detroit, Green Bay has to be next. Green Bay has to be next because they beat the crap out of Dallas. They are better than Dallas. The Eagles are getting the hype right now because of Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. When Vic Fangio just got run out of town in Miami, and the Eagles are bringing in Kellen Moore to try and, I guess, recreate some of the Shane Steichen magic, but it's clear that a lot of what was driving Jalen Hurts' success is that Shane Steichen is a special offensive coach, a special offensive mind. And that's part of the reason that a lot of people are bullish on Anthony Richardson this season. Kellen Moore got run out of Los Angeles and then got fired by, he didn't get run out of, he left. Let's get the order right. He got fired in Dallas. The offense immediately got better with Mike McCarthy calling it. And was anyone particularly impressed with the Kellen Moore offense that we saw in LA? Anyone? Bueller? That offensive coordinator job was there to be given to him with Jim Harbaugh. It's not like he left and is trading up. No, he's in Philly. That team was horrible by the end of the year. Horrible. It is culturally seems to be a mess. It is a rudderless ship. Does anyone have faith in Nick Sirianni? You want to do the coach and quarterback thing we started with at the top? You would not take Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni over Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. You just wouldn't. And maybe 2 years ago you would have. Or a year ago after the Super Bowl, maybe you would have. Not now. Not after what we saw last year. And now you've got 2 offensive line spots that are probably going to be made worse. You lose a Hall of Famer at center. You slide over your right guard. Now you've got a new first-year starter at guard. Darius Slay's another year older in the back end. Your pass rush has gotten older. You have some youth in there too, but they're not proven. You got worse with the swap of Hassan Reddick for Huff. And so, like, what is there to be afraid of if you're the Packers? And we're going to see it week 1. That's the beauty of this. We're going to find out week 1. I think the Packers make a statement in week 1 and they go, look, this is foolish that we are so far behind. Like if you open up the FanDuel app and you look at Super Bowl odds, Philadelphia is on the first page. You got to scroll to find Green Bay. That is foolish. And then no one else is really even in the conversation. Really, the Rams, you lose Aaron Donald, you lose Raheem Morris. I understand Sean McVay is a really good coach. Matthew Stafford had a resurgent season last year, but even then, he had his injuries. They've churned the offensive line. They're going to be relying on a lot of young players on a defense that is going to be newish. They're not stable in the same category. Now, Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, that's a pretty nice thing to have. I think they're a playoff team. But there's no one else that I would put in this same group. And I think it's San Francisco in a tier by themselves. I think the next tier is Detroit and Green Bay in the same tier. And then I think it's Philly, it's LA. I don't know. Dallas probably has to be in there. We don't have to put an NFC South team in there. They're not. I do want to mention one last thing because the 49er fans are talking and I want you to listen. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I love them so much. It's my career. It's my job. But as we move past, we're in the summer league now with the NBA, past the playoffs, past the finals. Stanley Cup is in the rear view. October is a long way away for baseball. September seems like it's forever from now for football. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. Open championship. I hope you got them in because, oh no, it's already started, but you can live bet it. I'm already live betting Scotty Scheffler. I'm hoping he shoots like 70 on the first day and someone shoots like 5 under. And I can live bet him at better odds. That's the beauty of FanDuel. And FanDuel is hooking up all customers with boosts or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Bears fans, you got to step up your game, guys. You got to step up your game because San Francisco, those 49er fans are really horning in on your territory. They are on your corner right now because any conversation related to Jordan Love, 49er fans, they are chirping. Tweet, 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 tweet. They are chirping. They want you to know so desperately, so viscerally that they think Jordan Love stinks. They are projecting, just like Bears fans have for years. Now, they're not as delusional about their own team because the 49ers are really good. Now, they are, I don't want to say just as delusional about Brock Purdy as the Bears fans were about Justin Fields. That would be uncharitable. Brock Purdy is a much better quarterback than Justin Fields. But they do think that he's the second coming of Tom Brady, and he's not. And they are very concerned. They are very worried that Jordan Love is going to be the guy. That he is going to be the quarterback who takes down the 49ers in the NFC. Because as of late, there has not been one of those. They've lost in the playoffs really of their own doing when they lost to Matthew Stafford in 2021. That was really a dropped interception. Now, did Matthew Stafford, play a role in that? For sure. For sure he did. But the Rams have otherwise not had much success against the 49ers. We know what happened with Aaron Rodgers. And it took freak injuries in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago, the first Brock Purdy NFC Championship game, for the Eagles to beat them in that one. So they have to feel like, well, look, we're kind of untouchable right now. But Jordan Love could change that. And they're afraid. They are scared that this guy who nearly walked into Santa Clara and beat the 49ers when it was supposed to be their year. They were an Anders Carlson field goal, a 41-yard field goal away from having it be a tie game after the Christian McCaffrey touchdown with just over a minute left. Jordan Love not needing to move the ball at all on that last drive to force overtime. Probably doesn't throw that interception. No, he did. And they're going to make sure everyone knows that he did. But the fact that they are this into it, this fast with Jordan Love, tells you everything you need to know about how they view Jordan Love as a threat. That's how they view Jordan Love and this Packers team. They know that this team is on the come up, that their arrow is pointing up, and that their arrow is very dangerous, very perilous, precariously, potentially pointed down. Because you can only walk that high wire act for so long when you don't have an elite quarterback. And they don't. They don't. And even an elite system that makes you play and produce like an elite quarterback has not been good enough in the postseason because you run into Patrick Mahomes, you run into these quarterbacks who are that good. And you need to take advantage of all your breaks. You can't drop the interception. Ironic. The 49ers had a dropped interception, cost them a chance to go to the Super Bowl. The Packers against the 49ers had a dropped interception, cost them. The Packers dropped an interception against Colin Kaepernick once upon a time in the postseason. A Micah Hyde potential would-be pick-six game sealer. These things can turn on a trifle. And with the selection of Jordan Love, Brandon Ayuk, yeah, they sniped Brandon Ayuk from the Packers, but the Packers got to draft Jordan Love. And he could be the guy to dethrone the 49ers as the favorites, the power in the NFC. And they know it. All right, back tomorrow, much more as we get you set for training camp. The next time we talk, stuff will be happening. I'll probably have to record before camp actually opens, but stuff will be happening on your phones. You'll be getting updates. You'll be getting alerts. There'll be open practices soon. We're back. We are so back, baby. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, and go do it on the social medias, the Instagrams, the TikToks, the YouTubes, so you can stay Locked On Packers.